All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. We're here for a very exciting, for me anyways, night. And so it's exciting for me, it's my job to make it exciting for you. 5 gifts of the spine. Okay, who likes gifts?
Absolutely.
Yes, you like to get presents? How to get presents?
Especially for millions of dollars.
Well, this is a priceless sort of a thing. I want to start out, first of all, those of you who haven't met me, my name is Dr. Peter Fisk. That's 2 of you. Welcome. I'm a health geek. I'm a health geek. There's, people know about like tech geeks, right? We even have a couple in the room. Or 3, a few. Since I started trying to help change my own health and well-being when I was about 17, 18 years old, I have been looking at what is it that gets the body to do what it does, and how we can help the health and well-being happen in a natural way, in a way that involves interventions or practices that make sense, as opposed to things that don't make sense. I'm not going to spend a typical conversation that you might have in this world. Having said that, the person would then talk about what didn't make sense a lot. Not me. I'm not going to do it. Because that doesn't really fit the model that we're involved in here, which has a tremendous amount to give. So instead of talking about the ways that things don't work, I'm going to talk about how they do work. And we're going to talk today, again, that's why we start with gifts. What are gifts? Well, they're things that are given by something or someone. And we're going to talk about all the elements that go into the gifts that exist in the spine. Okay? For those of you wondering who haven't met my spine, this is a plastic model. Okay? A little bit bigger. This might be Arnold Schwarzenegger size compared to John's size or Ian's size. But most human spines are about that length. They all involve 24 movable bones from the top to the bottom, with a sacrum down here and a skull up there. Sacrum is this bone here that's kind of the keystone of the hips and the pelvis. Some people have 23, some people have 25 movable segments, but it all boils down to basically the same sorts of things, and the gifts are the same either way. Okay, so what we're going to talk about then is what these gifts are and how they kind of flow and function. Okay, so to start this off, everybody has something, or is about to have something that looks like this, which is a few pages, and so we're going to just walk through those. The first thing after 5 gifts says restorative. Now, the reason we're talking about this in this way, there's 2 different ways to approach our health. The restorative perspective, which is what most people relate to in terms of healthcare, what we've been indoctrinated and enculturated into in terms of healthcare, is restorative healthcare. Mr. Russell, you've been playing guitar all these years. You have arthritis in your wrist. We are going to do some physical therapy. We're going to maybe manipulate. We're going to put a splint. We're going to do something to help restore this part to its former place. Now, this works really well unless there's already a disease there. Disease of the wrist, anybody? Thank you. Arthritis, right? This is what you were told. Oh, arthritis in your wrist, 25 years old. Does that make sense? Well, maybe not, but if we're going to restore that part, we can only do it up to the level that is possible unless it's been taken down by some disease process, okay? But the restorative approach is all, and I've written it down there, it's all about helping get back to something. Okay, we have a variety of ages in here. Has anybody ever successfully gone back to where they once were? Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, we laugh because it's just sort of like, well, but then you think of it as, gosh, if only I could get my leg back to, you know, the day before that T-bone accident, the day before I was rollerblading and fell down and mangled my knee, the day before whatever it might have been, right? So we have this amazing perspective, very enculturated. It's like, well, we're going to restore you back to where you were. But this is not the bionic age of like, let's put parts in and you're as good as you used to be. Even though there are multiple new joints, even among us, that are available to people of a certain, you get to a certain age, like, okay, yeah, let's get a new hip in there. Let's, things are wearing out and we put in new stuff. Does that, anybody know that that solves everything?
No, it doesn't.
No, man, not at all. Not at all. It can, though, help increase the function. It can absolutely be something that's like, wow, I mean, we have one practice member, she got 2 new knees. One before she was in care, one after she's in care. The one after she's in care, it's like she's recovered. She went through the process, probably 50% smoother with 150% or 200% greater result than she had with the first one. Why? Because of something that gets we're going to talk about tonight. The bottom line in restorative care is that it's giving you a fish. Anybody here is like it's better to teach a person to fish than to give them a fish. You give a fish, you get to eat now. If you teach them to fish, you get to eat for the rest of your life. As long as you're able to fish, you're good, right? Our whole approach, if you look at the next thing, is what we call reorganizational. And what we're looking at in reorganizational healing is teaching you how to fish. Teaching you how to, how is your body operating? What is it that's going on when you have a fever, when something seems strange, when you have a pain or there's something that's odd, when your feedback mechanism that we call your physical body is upset in some way, what's going on, right? Well, if you learn how to read the signals, learning how to develop strategies that help you recognize what's going on, your body's going to have the ability to reorganize when there's new information, and this is going to create the ability to heal in a greater way and to learn. So we're looking about developing strategies and perspectives that increase and improve your performance. And how that happens is by taking what's going on and looking at it in a reorganizational perspective, not in a restorative perspective. Okay? Good. So, I'm a little dry-throated, so pardon me just sipping away here. Great. So it says right here, developing new strategies and perspective for improved performance, function, and life. May I mention what you mentioned to me last night? Okay. So Ann and I were talking last night. She came in she started care with us in September, and there was some stuff going on, right? Pain type stuff, then nagging things, okay? And so we worked, we started with that, and we worked with that, and I believe I did say something that probably was not as blunt as I just was, but I said, let's see what's going on here. So most of those nagging things, even though last week there was kind of this bolt from the blue that made her suddenly lock up and not be able to move, most of those things are really not around anymore, right? And what you told me last night, I'm going to paraphrase and you get to tell me if it came out all right. You work in an organization. Anybody work in an organization? Or ever, raise your hand if you ever have worked in an organization. Got it. Now, so she has a part, she's got a role, and she's got a place. That's what happens. That's what organizations do to be successful, is kind of create these boundaries and boxes and definitions. And so Ann's talking to me, she says, it's kind of amazing. I kind of call people up and say, hey, we need to sit down and talk about this. They have an area of joint interest. And she says, and maybe you probably would tell it better, but you basically said to me that this thing that you never used to do was to reach out to your colleagues even in other departments who are associated with the same thing, and say, hey, let's talk about what we're doing together and how to make it better, right?
Right.
And when you have done that, which has been happening more frequently than ever recently, are finding something really cool. Not only are there solutions, right, but whatever it was that was keeping you from calling them, which might have meant like they won't listen to me, or what's the use,
It's
or
easier to just complain about it.
yeah, right. Not there. They're excited and open, and things are moving, right? Well, that certainly looks like a new perspective to me, right? So spontaneously, Hannah, here's this person. We're working on her neck. We're working on her low back. They start to improve their function, and then she starts behaving differently. What's up with that, right? Maybe it's not the sort of thing I mean, you've been listening to him, so already we got something going on, but it's not something that most people think of, right? We are schooled as chiropractors. That means we're experts in the spine and nervous system and how function operates. We learn neurology, nutrition, all these different things. But the bottom line of our expertise in terms of Dr. Jackson and myself is we're really agents of change. You have a symptom that's sticking you in the back. You ever relate to that? You have something going on that is like, it's dysfunctional, it's not working, okay? And sometimes that it is waking you up at night, okay? And you come here and we start saying stuff like, well, how, let's talk about gifts and let's talk about what can work and let's look at reducing the overall tension. And my goodness, let's look at your neck when you have low back pain, right? We go beyond a group of parts and start saying, what's the big picture here? And so the big picture then, in terms of these gifts, is the spine has function. That's the first gift. Second, let's do them in order. Emotion, sense of self, behavior, and consciousness. Those are the 5 gifts. And we're going to talk about each one of them. And it's going to be interesting because as we go, you're going to notice how each one of them is sort of interrelated. One builds on the other, and then somehow as it builds, starts to develop the other as well. Sort of an evolutionary perspective. Okay, so the first gift is function. Spinal nerves, well, I'll just do this way. Carol, what's a function of the spine? To hold your body up. Perfect, yeah. And to hold your body up, you said something else really cool. Straight. Right, straight. Those of you who looked at x-rays with me, not straight this way. We want some curves in here. But this way, we're looking at straight. Okay, if I stand like this, okay, anybody ever see anybody stand like this? Head not exactly over the middle, more over one leg, okay?
That's how I come in a lot.
The yeah. Yeah. So if we take a picture of this spine, it's going to have the center of gravity here, and it's going to have what is supporting over here, not in the same place. For every 5 degrees off of that center line, the orthopedists tell us that you can expect 15 years off your life expectancy for every 5 degrees off. Now, if somebody has scoliosis, they go way over and come back, that's a lot of deviation to be dealing with. This is something I just heard at a meeting last week, and I was like, my jaw dropped 15 years, because you have no idea how often I see somebody standing up and they got 5 degrees over. I mean, it's like day in and day out. And those of us who are, one of the things that's kind of it's just a strange phenomenon as we talk more around the tables as you're in care and we're discussing things. Has anybody noticed you start looking at other people's posture? It's like, I didn't try to make this work this way, but it's this thing that happens because you're paying attention to yours. And Dr. Amy and I are talking about it with you, about like, don't be accelerated, you want to come back, stand up, all these different things. And then there you are in the airport going, man, not good, right? You're in the line at King Super or something, just going, woo, I don't know, you're going to be calculating life expectancy. You're like, wow, I got 30 years, man. I don't know.
I think I know some more people that look like they have scoliosis.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. It's just it's one of those things. It's like, oh gosh, because all of a sudden, what happened? Your eyes got open to something. That's our job. That's our job. So, function. How many quadrillion? There's 4 quadrillion. For our purposes here tonight, that's a lot. It's like, I don't know, 24 zeros or something. 4 quadrillion cells is the estimate. I don't know who counts, but it's an estimate of the cells in the human body at any one moment in time. All of them orchestrated to do what they're supposed to do. I mean, the hairs on your head know why they're there, and they know what they're doing, and they know what they're made of. They're doing their best. They're organized, okay? That's function. And that function is mediated by the spine. Everything is modulated through this spinal structure, which Carol says is there to hold us up and to hold us straight. What's so important about it? What's so important about it is what's inside. There's a spinal cord. There's a picture. Right in here, and the nerves coming off. They coordinate every single function that there is. Everything. So, anybody have lunch today? Raise your hand if you have lunch. Okay. How much time did you spend telling your stomach what it was you were eating and how much acid it was going to need to digest that? Yeah, 0. Good news on that one. Your body knows. It's doing it. It's doing it already based on an intelligent design, based on an intelligence inside of us that is mediated through these spinal nerves. Okay? So the other piece of information there is we're looking at, well, the spine either moves or stores tension. Anybody ever notice their shoulders storing tension? Right? He's like, well, it's a little close there. Stay down. You know? We all do it. And our spine, one of the reasons for that's kind of an old joke. When you don't want to think about something, Carlos, where do you put it? You're kind of
File.
in a file. And that file is in the back of your mind, isn't it? Where's the back of your mind? It's right here. Your spine literally is your subconscious. It stores everything. And through the process of network care that we're going to talk more about in a little bit, what happens is there are 2 distinct waves that develop, one of them related to breath and one of them related to physical movement, that actually move the tension. So your spine, the reason it's 24 movable is so that you can do cool stuff like bend over and reach things and bend backward and move around. It's this incredible engineering, so to speak, design. And that movability is keyed to the level of function that we have. So if you can move more effectively, you have greater performance. You have greater performance. If you see somebody who's performing, we're used to having a stage, right? There's this kind of thing where somebody's talking and moving around, but then there's also dance and all that stuff. If you see somebody dancing and they're like dancing with half their body, but the other half is just down, it's like, what's up with that, right? Well, that's performance. It's having a level of balance and being flexible, being able to use all of you, right? You don't see a lot of one-legged bicyclists out there doing real well against bicyclists that have 2 legs. Why? Because you got half the power there, right? So, performance. Now, the second gift of the spine is emotion. Energy in motion. So, E for energy. 1, 2, 3, E, energy, motion. Most of us have favorites. Anger, frustration, happy. How about like ecstasy? Who really is up for ecstasy? Like every few months, maybe, right? It's not something you walk around going, whoa, I just feel ecstatic. It's like, it's weird. I don't know, I'm going to be embarrassed about this, right? It's not the range of emotion that we typically express relatively narrow. Does that make sense, everybody? Now, we all know somebody, perhaps we are somebody who is emotional, right? That range may be equally narrow, right? But but it could be just how close it is to the surface, right? So think of somebody who's you consider emotional. Okay. Is it because they express lots of emotion all the time, or because it's easy for them to get mad or angry or cry? It's because it's easier, right? Most of us look at they're emotional because they're expressing. What are they expressing? The same thing again and again and again, or but similar ranges. Does that make sense? It's not common for us to see people who express a lot of different sorts of emotion. Calm can be an emotion. Powerful can be an emotion. Aggressive can be an emotion. There's so many different things. What am I doing when I practice those different states? When I just did 3 right here, what did I do? I changed this. Calm. Powerful. Aggressive. The spine changed in every single one of them. It mediates emotion. Emotion flows through the spine, and it is one of the gifts that the spine allows us. Okay, everybody in here has had a job at one time or another, right? Is that fair to say? Okay, great. Has anybody ever interviewed somebody to work in your company, or interviewed somebody, or can you imagine interviewing somebody to bring them on? Okay, all right, so here you are. You're going to interview me. I'm going to meet you. I'm Peter Fisk. I'm gonna change the sales of your entire organization. Right? What does it say? It says something, right? My tone of voice did too. But the position was a dead giveaway. Yeah, right? Totally different. It's emotion that makes that different, that modulates this positioning. And emotion is just energy, right? But if energy stays bound up, what does it do, Ian?
Makes you uptight.
Hurts. Yeah, exactly. It makes you uptight. It gets stuck. But if it's in motion, what happens? Well, maybe you start calling your colleagues and saying, hey, how about doing this new thing? Maybe, lots of stuff happens there. So, you enjoy the life that you have. Now, here's something very interesting. These 5 gifts are related to things that we've seen through research processes with folks under network care. This is a kind of a nice concept. 5 gifts, it's a catchy title. They all came out of a research study. We studied people who were under care in network chiropractic offices, and we asked them all kinds of questions about whether they were sick more often, or what their symptoms were like, and how their inner voice was critical or not critical, and if they were, had the problem that they used to have, and how they were performing at work, everything. And what we saw was that people across the board enjoyed their life more. That's an emotion. But it's actually a whole range of different things. Life enjoyment. What does that mean? But they appreciate and want to do what they're doing, and they are doing more of what they want. Right? Based on what? Based on the spine having an ability to process tension, to function more effectively, and to express different ranges. Okay? Pretty exciting, really. But this idea of emotion, life enjoyment, people go, what's the point? He's just talking. Well, the reality is this comes out of experience with thousands and thousands of people. This is what the spine does when it gets healthy. And we, in Network, decided to study what works. We decided to look at optimal situations and say, wow, let's extrapolate that. Let's take what's optimal and bring it down to, through all ranges of expression before that to see what, how to build toward what works. Now, this is an interesting thing. As a chiropractor, a doctor of chiropractic, I spent 6 solid years studying what doesn't work. Right? I mean, you would not believe the hours spent on the topic of pathology. How to tell one bump from another. I mean, it was just insane, this kind of stuff we had to learn in terms of all the names for how the body can dysfunction. Now, comparatively to how it can function, it's just sad. And we're working on that right now with college curriculum, with chiropractic college curriculums around the world, really. New Zealand, in Spain, there's a few colleges in this country who are still willing to listen to this kind of thing, to say, let's study what works. How does it work? Not all the stuff that goes wrong and what doesn't work. So overall, though, as we look at what the spine is doing, you want to understand that this function develops, and one of its function is this sense of the emotion. I have a provocative statement at the top there that I haven't talked about yet. Defense reactions. What's a defense reaction? If I were suddenly to go, ah, and try to throw something at you, right? You're going to have a defense reaction. In this room, we know that I'm kind of kidding, and everybody knows me pretty well, so, even though you haven't met me before, you were kind of, this could be interesting as opposed to, we didn't have the full grizzly bear. It was sort of like, what's going to happen here, right? Right? So it wasn't, wow, oh my goodness, that's a defense reaction. Okay, so let's say, it's the 9th of June, and you're actually up at Horsetooth, and you see that smoke plume coming at you, and you've been camping, and you actually live there, and a lot of people you love are right on the other side of that fire from you. That's a defense reaction. Or later that night, when we happen to have our windows open the way we like to in June, and woke up and said, oh God, what is this stuff? And my whole home is filled, my lungs are filled with ash. That's a defense reaction. Okay, so we have this extreme fight or flight perspective, but even losing your breath for a minute is a defense reaction. For some people, hey, your car's been repossessed or whatever. We identify with lots of stuff, things, and so if we lose our things sometimes, that's a defense reaction. Up to 35% reduction in blood flow to the uniquely human part of us in terms of our brain. Touch right here, put your hands on the forehead, 2 hands. This right here is your prefrontal cortex, right under that bone. And what that is unique. It is, human beings have them, and dolphins have them, that's it. We haven't been able to understand the dolphins real well yet, so we got to work on ourselves. And what this is supposed to do is modulate and mediate our choices so that we're not just making choices based on pure defense, fight or flight type of options. Okay? Anybody ever make a fight or flight type choice? Of course. Of course. When it's needed, I want to be able to muster the strength to lift a car off my kid, or to knock down a door, or to grab everybody and run away from a grizzly bear, or whatever it might be. Right? That's what we want. But I don't want to do that based on hearing a loud noise in Starbucks. It's just like, that's not what we need to do. It's just like, okay, what was that? Instead of like, right? It's like, we got a little control board. So emotion here is one of those things. You want to be aware of what it is and understand it. John, you check if this thing needs a chair. Okay, so function number 1, emotions number 2, sense of self, the third gift of the spine. What the heck is that? I got a to take a little bit of a detour onto what happens in network care. When you're in network, we start to work with your spine first to help get breath from the tip of your tailbone to the base of your skull, all the way up. And as that breath goes through every spinal structure, every vertebra, what it does is kind of decompress him. And what happens there is the body, who's in care has felt themselves get taller on the table? Yeah, okay, look around. Everybody raise their hand who's been in care more than a week. So the cool thing there is like, well, what is that about? How does that work? Well, Joanne, what we see is there is this lengthening, this decompression of the whole spine vertebral column based on the muscles getting looser. Which muscles? The ones that are controlled by a chronic state of toxic emotional holding. Those ones, if we change our attitude, if we're happier, we get it changes. If we have a network entrainment that helps us decompress, we get longer and taller right there. That's the respiratory wave. There's another wave that happens. Welcome. In network, and that wave is called the network wave, catchy name, or the somato for body, psychic for mind wave. This somatopsychic wave is actually a movement within the spinal structures. It's engineering. It's a standing wave, which means it moves back and forth within a given volume. In case you start to fall asleep because I'm sounding like your physics professor in high school, what that means is information moving within one space and affecting all the things within that space. That gets a little easier anyways. So this somatopsychic wave, what it does is actually rock the spinal structures up and down. And as it does that, what it does is carry information that changes the tone and position of the spine. Okay? And as it changes the tone and position of the spine, we can have a sense of flexibility in ourself. Right? Let's go back to our interviewer. Okay, how are you going to do with this person? You want me to dance? You want me to perform for your company? How about if you're not even going to hand me one of those signs that says, you might put me in a Liberty tax thing if I would, at least raise my hand away. But you can bet I'm not getting the M&E, not showing up like this, right? Too what? Rigid. Too stuck, right? Our sense of, anybody know anyone who has maybe an overly rigid sense of self? Of course we do. Of course we do. Anybody ever feel inside yourself like maybe you've got a little bit too much rigidity in your sense of self? Yeah. It's like, gosh, could I just get over this instead of feeling this way again and again and again and again? How long am I going to let that person, everybody has that person, whoever they are, usually a relative, be able to press my buttons? How come I can do great, I can stand up, I could talk in front of Congress. I've gone to chiropractic colleges, but man, get me around my older sister, and it's like I have a giant Staples push here, right? Why is that? It's my sense of self, okay? And what happens as we gain energy and gain function in the first level, and as we're able to have a range of emotion in this next thing that we talked about, then our sense of self actually has greater stability because we can modulate. We don't have to be the one. You stand rigidly like this, and a high wind comes through, you're falling down, right? But if you bend like a willow, the way they talk about in martial arts, what's going to happen? You have some flexibility. And flexibility in our sense of self is important because then we need to know who we know. Know who we are and what we're about, right? That person has backbone. So we're talking about the spine, same thing. That's backbone. But we also have to have flexibility with that. And the third gift of the spine in terms of sense of self is you learn there's a range of who you are. Anybody been in care more than a couple weeks? Does that make sense? You've got a range of who you are. You don't have the same set of choices once you start to get more flexible in your spine. This is, this is one of those things, we didn't sit around in a room and say, well,
What's that third gift supposed to be? Wow.
It was more like, gosh, look what happens when this network wave goes through your spine, Richard. What happens is things start to change, and you stand up, and you're standing differently, and your posture's different. And then when we ask you how your life is, you say, you know what? That stuff doesn't bother me anymore. Doesn't bother me anymore. I don't care what that person's doing. I know who I am. And I don't have to buy into the giant Staples button version of me. I've got one that's more flexible. I've got one that's not carrying a bunch of tension. Sound good?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Who wouldn't like to approach tomorrow's problem with something different? Anybody? Yeah, I mean, no. It's like, geez, it'd be great to approach it. Because when I said tomorrow's problem, who already has an idea what that is? Right? We all carry that stuff around. It's like, oh, well, it's probably going to be, this. Right? Everybody had an idea. It's crazy, It's like, oh yeah, what is tomorrow's problem? We haven't gotten there yet, but our minds would like to predict what it might be based on what? The past. Based on that was the set of circumstances. Well, if you have this flexibility, you can be more self-determining and say, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to approach the day? Whatever tradition you may sort of include yourself in terms of spirituality or religion, somewhere in the text of that religion, there's going to be something about being present and taking today as today. Doesn't matter. In languages I don't read, I know that's what it says, right? So it doesn't, it's not a matter of like there's some level of secret that some tradition has. It's more like humans do this thing that we create meaning for ourselves and then put names on it. If we talk about Vedic scripture or Buddhist practice or Catholic versus Methodist, Christian, whatever, the reality is there's some drive inside of us to create meaning, and in that creating meaning, one of the things we do is create a sense of self. And if that self is so rigid that it has to show up like this and only be like this, then we are losing something that we were given that is a gift, which is that there's flexibility. We can see things in different ways. Anybody ever here walk a mile in their shoes? Right? For all of our capacity or possibly incapacity, the inability to do that, it is a basic human thing. To be like, okay, I have no understanding. We're close to the same age. We've had a lot of similar experiences. Pretty relatively similar. If we were to look at the entire human population, you and I are like this compared to, in terms of all the different things. But I don't really get, I don't understand. I haven't had the experiences that you've had. Not just female and male bodies, but just like you just don't know. For all the time we say, yes, I think I know what you're doing, or whatever, we don't have that sense of who's in there and what that person's experience is. But the cool thing is, the wave goes through that spine, and there's a similar flavor, there's a similar thing that happens. These gifts get given to everybody when that wave goes through their spine. And what those gifts are, really, Max, have a capacity to increase what it is that we're doing. And to take that inner life and be able to say, I'm going to do something with it. Right? Life enjoyment was one of the gifts that I put under emotion. But if you're saying, wow, I'm going to do something with this, doesn't matter how old you are, that's a good thing in your life. It doesn't matter where you are in your career, in your education, in your anything. If you've got this sense inside, wow, I know who I am, and there is something in here for me to give, that is the gift of sense of self that we're looking at. So, function, emotion, sense of self. Here's something really interesting. Behavior. So what do we do to make change? As the structure of the spine changes, we make new and healthier choices. Okay? These choices and behaviors lead to new ways of looking at our world. New ways of looking at our world lead to different results. Does that make sense? That was a mouthful. It was more than I put on any other thing, right? There were slides on the wall. Didn't have time to totally create that. You know, there's a lot of words up there. If you have a feeling, right? Second gift. And then that feeling leads to a thought. Wow, I'm going to do something here. What is that in here? That thought comes out of your sense of self. What do you then need to make it real? Behavior. And that's a gift that the spine has. Is you say, well, I don't have to be this way. I can be that way. That's going to lead to different behavior. Just like my little example of this guy and this guy, right? Totally different behavior. Well, the spine modulates that. If you're aware and you go through, this wave goes through and you're doing your SRI, your somatic respiratory integration work that we do with you, and you go, all right, I got to go talk to this person. I want to give this gift, and this person's there that I need to get them to get a sense that this gift is a good thing. You know, maybe they'll be interested in that, and maybe I can give the gift in their organization and they'll hire me or whatever it is. I gotta take action towards that, and that action is the thing that as you change, you're going to start to say, well, I could do that. This right here is exactly what you were describing that we talked about at the beginning. It's like suddenly you were saying, all right, maybe it is easier to complain, but I'm tired of that. And the cool thing is, you might not have even had that thought process. You could look back and say, that's cool. But you might not even just, well, today, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to do something different. And I'm going to choose this course over here and do this thing this other way. Right? Doesn't happen like that. It was like, screw it, I'm calling. Or, wow, look, they're right here. We do the same thing. Can we talk about this sometime? Let's have whatever. Let's stop and talk about this. It's spontaneous. It comes about. Why does it come about? That behavior just exits. It just emerges from having greater function, feeling a range of emotion, and then having a sense of self in the midst of that. And this behavior just comes right out of it. We see it time and time and time again. Now, I'm going to get this paraphrase a little funny, but none of you are going to have read this paper, so I'm okay. The lead researchers, a Harvard-trained, he was a Harvard biology and anatomy professor for a lot of years. He worked studying veterans and balance. Then he worked based on that, working with NASA. This is the guy I was talking to you about the other night. Working with NASA because the astronauts would have this tremendous equilibrium issue when they went up into space based on not having gravity. And he helped understand why that was. And he was part of designing the research project the primary research project that we did in Network back in the mid-90s. And he said, people under network care make better choices about their health and well-being. Okay, what's the choice? It's a behavior, right? They do different stuff towards their health and well-being without being told that that's what they're supposed to do. Doesn't that sound cool? Like, who would like it if we just said, do this? What is that? It's a fish. Right? But if you could understand what to do and had a sense of what to do, because am I ever going to be in your head looking out your eyes? No. My wife is very brilliant. She can actually read people's minds. Some of you know about this. She'll say stuff and you go, how did you know that? Right? She did it yesterday. You go, all the time. Huh?
Yeah.
Right? But you still never know. And we're never going to be in your shoes making your choices. Ever. But if that wave has moved through and you're used to being with the energy of your body and allowing the emotion and the range that's there, what's going to happen is you're going to recognize, oh, this is how I fish. This is what's necessary right here. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's what we do to make change. Change your structure, change your spine, that changes how you look at things, which comes to the big word here, consciousness. So the first thing to think of in terms of consciousness, what does that mean? Okay, now we have some people who might offer, definitions here. It basically means being aware, self-observant. Okay, you may be conscious right now. Who's had dinner? Okay, so those of you who didn't raise your hand, you may be conscious that something's going on here. Does that make sense? And everybody is probably conscious of, to some degree, their derriere and their spine, lower down, like, okay, this feels good on my back, leaning up here. Or I finally get to sit down, maybe, okay, for someone who stands for her work. Whatever it is, we are aware, we're self-aware. That's consciousness. And that's a very, very interesting thing in human evolution, or if you look at the capacity that human beings have, awareness or consciousness is not finite. There is no, as far as we can tell, there's no end to this. Okay? Now this is going to go out to you Netflix people. Anybody a Netflix person in here who likes to rent stuff off of there? Okay. So what you're going to look for, because you wouldn't find it at Blockbuster, is a movie called The Secret Life of Plants. Got that? Anybody ever? You probably would know about this movie, Carlos. Anybody ever see that movie? Okay. Here's the pitch. It's got a Stevie Wonder soundtrack. Very cool. And it has this incredible still life photography of things growing. It's wonderful. Okay? But I didn't bring it up to talk about that. Why I brought it up is because it has this little part in there. It's kind of a documentary about how plants behave. Which is pretty interesting, because if a plant can behave, wow. How about us? But they talk about this certain tribe in sub-Saharan Africa. And this tribe in sub-Saharan Africa has planting and worship practices that have been handed down verbally for whatever millennia. That's based on the orbit of a star that you cannot see with the naked eye. Gotcha? Got anybody so far? I got some jaws going. Okay. So what the heck does that mean? There is a star that these people have been, that based on when it's doing what it's doing, next to the Pleiades. Anybody know the Pleiades? This is a constellation that we can see with the naked eye. It's a little group, or Subaru logo, depending. It's a little bit of trivia, but anyways. This group of stars that you can see in the Milky Way, right? And there's this other star that you can't see with the naked eye that these people talk about. And they say, next to this place, off to that side, it does these things, and they base their whole culture, planting, religion, everything on this thing. So consciousness, awareness, that's not very fun. I mean, that is really far out there for our day-to-day life, right? And it's just an example of this sense that consciousness is infinite. But the spine, if you take your spine like this, okay, now in this position, what are you going to be aware of? Joy, power, health? No. I mean, if I straighten my neck, it's really bad. All I can see is the ground. Okay, so what am I going to be looking at? Things that are depressing. This position is going to affect our consciousness. What about this one? Open, right? What happens when we open our consciousness? Right? A whole lot of stuff. I'll tell you one. Okay? In the spinal cord, there are specialized receptors for chemicals that modulate feeling in the body. With me so far? In the spinal cord. More than anywhere else. These chemicals, when I'm like this, they have about 55 places, 50 to 55 places that they can bind to. That's it. Very, very selective range. That range happens to have the basic fight or flight reptilian values. Kill it, eat it, mate with it, or run with it. Those are the ones. That's what this position offers us. Okay? Full on defense, 55-ish, depending. This position in the spinal cord, between 250 and 300 different receptors are actively engaged in the different possibilities here. Now, we can do the math. I don't want to be able to come up with a percentage here, but that's a lot more range, okay? And that range, what am I going to be aware of in that range? Well, a whole heck of a lot more things in terms of options, in terms of, and options, Aaron, for who? For me, here, the options are all going to be about me. What about here?
Everybody's surrounding you.
Yeah. Like, what does this posture say to you? Come on down. Right? It's like, okay. It's a gift. Yeah. There's an expansion in this position. And the thing about this position is that consciousness, if we looked at the spine, this is the most radiant that it can be. It has all these things available to it. And when the wave has gone through there and then it's like this, there's an immense amount of awareness that people report. People in this position in network care, when there's been a lot of, that wave has moved through there and done its job, and the vertebrae have changed their position, and that the information is going through, they say the craziest stuff, which is kind of interesting. But the other thing that happens is they start to say, you know, Richard, when I came here, I really wanted to get rid of this pain or this pain or this pain or whatever it was. When I came here, I thought you could help me with. But I really now see that part of my gift, I have to give back. And we hear this all the time from people at a certain place in care where the wave has moved through, and all of a sudden, doing their job and getting the promotions and doing their schoolwork or whatever it is, performing at the level where they were where they played before is not enough anymore. They want to do more. Okay? This is a change in consciousness. So, function, right? Emotion, sense of self, behavior, and consciousness. People come here for all of these things. Function, one of the signs of a lack of function that people often relate to is pain. And they say, chiropractic office, or maybe one of you talks to them, or somebody talked to you and said, oh, chiropractor, you should see my chiropractor. They do these tiny touches on your butt, and you don't know how it works. They don't twist and pop, and it doesn't seem to hurt, and you feel better, right? Okay? That's about the description you get. Right? But then other ones say, well, yeah, you should be my chiropractor. It's a Friday, and on Fridays, it's more busy because two of them are working together, and most of the time when you see people coming out, they've been crying, right? Because there's emotion involved. But then there's these other things. And people come for all these different reasons. We've had people come and say, look, I know there's more, I just don't know what it is. Or I know there's more, I heard you could help. I don't hurt. We give you a little person, and say, put your pains here and tell us how much they are and stuff as a drawing at the beginning. And some people say, NA. It's just like not somewhere. They're here. They're here because there's a function that they could have. There's a level of behavioral performance that they'd like to have. They want to experience more of themselves being in a state of power and grace and living more of the life that they know is inside, but they haven't been able to get it out. So, what does it take to go from one to the other, to the other, to the other, to the other? No matter what, whether it's the 5 things we're talking about tonight or anything in life, it takes energy. It takes energy to go from a place where it's like all the status quo, it all looks the same, all there is retail jobs, right? All there, whatever. It takes energy to go from that place to it's like everything's a miracle. Or even there's hope, right? It takes a lot of energy to go from it's all the same to everything's a miracle. That's a lot of energy. But to go from it's all the same to there's hope, it takes a little bit. But every level, wherever we are, it takes a little more energy to get to the next one, and a little more energy to get to the next one. Part of what we do in this Jackson Fisk place is help you, number one, find the things that are blocking the energy, and number two, get the energy through that's already there. Energy is bound up in muscles that are tight. Got your shoulders up, that takes work. Holding yourself at 10 degrees off center, that takes a lot of work. So much work that that's the 15-year life expectancy business, right? So if you don't have to exert that much work anymore because you're like this, if you don't have to try so hard emotionally to fix something that can't be fixed by you anyways, because you know it's not your problem, and you can just be compassionate instead, what do you got? More energy. And the cool thing is that most of the time, I don't think I can remember in all of the people, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I cannot remember right now, I've never even thought until this moment, I can't remember somebody saying to me, Kristen, I've got all this energy, what do I do with it? Not once. I've seen a lot of people get that energy, but nobody's asked me what they should do with it. What do you think? Do you know why? Sense of self. Just close your eyes for a second. Go ahead, just close your eyes for a second and consider what would you do with more energy. Everybody got an answer like that. I would. Boom, you know. Some of it's behavior, some of it's, I don't know. Might have been amazing creations popped in. Artistic ventures, who knows? The cool thing is, you will know when you have more. And when you have these gifts are more manifest, you will start to say, okay, I'm going to give it in this way, I'm going to give it in that way. And that takes this, again, this Jackson Fisk chiropractic health and wellness beyond, okay, chiropractors fix this thing over here that's in the way, or this thing over here that goes out, right? We have plenty of conversations about these things. However, they're signs of something. They're signs of a system that isn't giving its gifts, and that could. So why we're here is because that's a possibility. So this is a new class. I'm very, very grateful that you came and took time on a Wednesday night to be here. I also know that in what we do, there's oftentimes when people listen to us, most of you here are in care, and when you're sitting there, you kind of go, wow, you know, that really describes my brother, or my neighbor, or my coworker, or my husband, or my fill in the blank. So if that happened, or if you sat there and said, wow, you know what, I might be able to use more of what he's talking about, talk to John. We'll set up a time to sit down and see if we can help your friend or your neighbor or yourself or whomever to see if this is something that we can help them with. To see if these gifts are something that makes sense to them and have meaning and that they want. Okay? Again, I'm really grateful you came. I appreciate your time and energy and attention. And see you next time. Oh, one more thing, ready? You gotta help me with this. I will sing loud, but everybody else is going to sing with me, and everybody knows the song. You ready? Happy birthday to you.